What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the channel. So today, finally, after months and months and months of negotiations and posturing and hearings and etc., we finally got a decision on what Deshaun Watson's punishment is going to be. And it's difficult, given the context, to see this as anything but a clear victory for both Deshaun Watson especially and the NFL Players Association. Why do we say that? The key thing is that Watson basically had no leverage. The way that this works, for those who don't really have much background in the process, is the second part of the process, if the first part doesn't lead to an agreement, the first part being a negotiation between the league and Watson's representatives. The second part is an independent arbitrator hears from the league, hears from Watson, and decides whether or not the player actually violated the NFL's player conduct policy. And if he did, how many games or how much money or both should he be given? And in this situation, not only did Sue L. Robinson, who was the arbitrator in question, decide that Watson was 100% guilty of not only sexual assault and not only hurting the NFL shield in a public relations way, but also putting other people in danger. So all three of those things, guilty, 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 on the balance of probability, which means more likely than not, he did these things. And then she decided, okay, he's going to get 6 games for what he did and has to go through counseling. And the way that this process was negotiated in the last collective bargaining agreement, once the independent arbitrator says this player deserves something that is not 0 games, 0 punishment, then the third stage is immediately engaged, which basically gives the NFL the option to appeal the result to the commissioner. In other words, they basically get to change the result, punishment-wise, to whatever the hell they want. So Sue L. Robinson, in the second stage of the process, the independent arbitrator, gave Roger Goodell everything that he needed to do whatever he wanted punishment-wise with Deshaun Watson. It was 100% in his court. So Roger Goodell came out last week and said, in this particular situation, I'm going to appoint somebody to give punishment for Deshaun that they think is fair. Now, we all know the way the world works, right? Someone of that kind of power would never give leeway for punishment to somebody else if they didn't know what the result was going to be, if they could give out the punishment themselves, which is the case here. So Roger Goodell knew that whatever he said in terms of what the punishment should be was going to happen. And so Watson is now in a situation where whatever he gets, whatever deal he can create for himself, is better than the full year punishment that he was likely going to get if the third stage of the process had come out and the designee that Roger Goodell appointed gave Watson a full year and made him apply for reinstatement next year. So the fact that Watson was able to finagle a deal that was only a $5 million fine, given the contract that Watson just got, which is the most guaranteed money in the history of the league, he is basically being given 0 financial penalty here. So not only is it just $5 million in fines, it's also the fact that the way that Deshaun's contract is structured, his game checks are a tiny, like 1% of his salary, which means that when he's suspended, he only loses a percentage of that tiny percentage. So when he misses games, he misses his game checks, but that's really nothing. And so he's getting almost 0 financial penalty here, and he gets to play this season. That is a huge, huge victory. And so the question becomes, the NFL had full control over this process. Why would they not give Deshaun a more stringent, a more serious penalty? I think the NFL did this for a combination of reasons. The first one being, it allows them to have better relations and better standing with the NFLPA in terms of negotiations in future and stuff like that. It was an olive branch, which allows the NFLPA to say, we defended Deshaun here. He could have gotten a year's suspension, and we were able to get him something significantly less and not a serious financial penalty. So in the future, the NFL, I'm sure, is hoping that pays off in terms of their negotiations. The second thing is this newly bargained disciplinary process now has more legitimacy, specifically because it produced a result which was agreed upon rather than just imposed from the league onto a player. And the third thing, to be cynical, is money. Because Deshaun Watson, in probably not an accident, comes back to play the Texans, his former team, in Week 13. Do we think that's an accident? Probably not. The Browns are more interesting. They're more viable. And Deshaun Watson is a legitimate superstar. Him being on the field improves the quality of play of the league, full stop. These are good things for the league. These are good things for the Players Association. I can also tell you definitively, as a lawyer who understands employment law and the process here, there is essentially a 0% chance the NFL would have lost this in court had they given Deshaun a full season and then been sued. Courts at all levels are very, very, very against interfering in collectively bargained disciplinary processes between a large employer and a union. They want to respect collectively bargained processes that are followed to the letter, as this disciplinary process was here. Fair or not, the NFL followed it to the letter. So there was nothing legally standing in the way of Deshaun being given a full year suspension. The NFL just didn't really want to risk getting sued here because there was the possibility that there could have been injunctive relief given to Deshaun while the case was going on, which may have allowed him to play in week 1 or week 7 or etc. The NFL wanted this over and done with, out of the public consciousness, so people would be able to enjoy football without this dark cloud hanging over the league. And then hopefully they forget and Deshaun comes back and people are like, oh, Deshaun Watson's back. That was clearly the hope here. Now, on the flip side, what the NFL gave up here was an opportunity to change its past pattern of not giving out enough serious discipline to its players who have wronged people outside of the workplace. Ben Roethlisberger, Ray Rice, Tyreek Hill, the list goes on. So what they had an opportunity to do here was to show that actually we do care about women. We do care about consent. We do care about ensuring that our employees are safe people or that they're going to be severely punished if they're not. Roger Goodell was handed an independent verdict which gave him the ability to do whatever he wanted punishment-wise. And he decided that that was less important than the reasons that we discussed previously. And so, is that disappointing? Of course. Is it surprising? Not really. Not really.